Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer, Lag GBA letter 2 BF Omicron Iyar, also Lag BaOmer or Lag LaOmer, is a Jewish religious holiday celebrated on the 33rd day of the counting of the Omer, which occurs on the 18th day of the Hebrew month of Iyar. According to some Rishonim, it is the day on which the plague that killed Rabbi Akiva's 24,000 disciples came to an end, and for this reason the mourning period of Sefirat HaOmer concludes on Lag BaOmer in many communities. According to modern kabbalistic tradition, this day is the celebration of Simeon ben Yochai and / the anniversary of his death. According to a late medieval tradition, Simeon ben Yochai is buried in Meron, and this association has spawned several well-known customs and practices on Lag BaOmer, including the lighting of bonfires and pilgrimages to Meron. Additionally, in modern-day Israel, the holiday also serves to commemorate the Bar Kokhba Revolt against the Romans. Etymology. Lag BaOmer is Hebrew for 33rd in the Omer. The Hebrew letter Hebrew Lamed Lamed Al as the numerical value of 30 and Hebrew Gimel Gimel or G as the numerical value of 3. A vowel sound is conventionally added for pronunciation purposes. Some Jews call this holiday Lag LaOmer, which means 33rd of the Omer, as opposed to Lag BaOmer, 33rd in the Omer. Lag BaOmer is the traditional method of counting by some Ashkenazi and Hasidic Jews. Lag LaOmer is the count used by Sephardi Jews. Lag LaOmer is also the name used by Yosef Karo, who was a Sephardi, in his Shulchan in our Chorch Jem 493-2 and CF 489-1, where BaOmer is inserted by Gulsater. The form Lag BaOmer is also sometimes used, though it is not grammatically correct in the setting. The Lubavitcher Reb, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, writes in his Likutei Sichos that a deeper reason for the term Lag BaOmer is that the Hebrew words Lag BaOmer, Hebrew Lamed, Hebrew Gimel, Hebrew Beit Tayin Mempish, spelled without the vav, have the same as Mersh Hebrew Memshin Hate Moses. He writes that Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, whose Yahrzeit is traditionally observed on this day, was mystic the spark of the soul of Moses. Origins. The origins of Lag BaOmer as a minor festival are unclear. The earliest clear reference to the observance of Lag BaOmer is a brief statement by Isaac ben Dobelo, 12th century, northern France. It is found in his annotations to Masovetri. He points out that Purim and Lag BaOmer always fall on the same day of the week, but he says nothing about the origin of the holiday. Lag BaOmer is also mentioned in the early 13th century by Avraham ben Nathan in his Sefer HaManhig. The Talmudist Menachem in his Gloss Yevamot 60:12 cites the Talmudic passage which states that during the time of Rabbi Akiva, 24,000 of his students died from a divinely sent plague during the counting of the Omer. The Talmud goes on to say that this was because they did not show proper respect to one another. Mary named Lag BaOmer as the day when, according to a tradition of the Jenim, the plague ended. Kabbalistic traditions of travelling to any of several locations around Meron at any of several points in the month of Iyar date to the medieval period, but it is not clear when, by whom, or in what way Lag BaOmer was first connected to Simeon ben Yochai. Nachman Krochmal, a 19th century Jewish theologian, among others, suggests that the deaths of Rabbi Akiva's students was a veiled reference to the defeat of Akiva's soldiers by the Romans, and that Lag BaOmer was the day on which Bar Kokhba enjoyed a brief victory. During the Middle Ages, Lag BaOmer became a special holiday for rabbinical students and was called Scholars' Day. It was customary to rejoice on this day through outdoor sports. Kabbalistic significance. Lag BaOmer is another significance based on the Kabbalistic custom of assigning a sefer to each day and week of the Omer count. The first week corresponds to Cheese, the second week to Shavuot, etc. And similarly, the first day of each week corresponds to Cheese, the second day to Shavuot, and so on. Thus, the 33rd day, which is the fifth day of the fifth week, corresponds to Hod Shibi Hod, splendor within splendor. As such, Lag BaOmer represents the level of spiritual manifestation or Hod that would precede the more physical manifestation of the 49th day Malkut Shibi Malkut, kingship within kingship, which immediately precedes the holiday of Shavuot. Customs and practices. While the counting of the Omer is a semi-mourning period, all restrictions of mourning are lifted for Ashkenazim on the 33rd day of the Omer. The Sephardic custom is to cease mourning the following day, celebrations being allowed on the 34th day of the Omer. As a result, weddings, parties, listening to music, and haircuts are commonly scheduled to coincide with Lag BaOmer among Ashkenazi Jews, while Sephardi Jews hold weddings the next day. It is customary mainly among Hasidim that 3-year-old boys be given their first haircuts. While haircuts may be taken anywhere if possible, the occasion is traditionally held at the tomb of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai in Meron, Israel, or at the Jerusalem grave of Shimon HaTzadik for those who cannot travel to Meron. Families go on picnics and outings. Children go out to the fields with their teachers with bows and rubber-tipped arrows. The prayer for special divine mercy on one's behalf is not said on days with a festive character, including Lag BaOmer, when God is showing one a smiling face, so to speak, as he does especially on the holidays. Religious. The most well-known custom of is the lighting of bonfires. The custom may originate in symbolizing the spiritual light brought into the world by Simeon ben Yochai. Some have speculated a connection between the bonfires of Lag BaOmer and the festivals of May Day and Beltane, which are celebrated by some European cultures around halfway between the spring equinox and summer solstice on 1 May, and are also celebrated through large bonfires. In Germany, it is also not uncommon to see rural men go out in the woods to shoot arrows at demons on May Day. This custom seems strangely similar to the bow and arrow theme on Lag BaOmer. Throughout the world, celebrants gather in the night and during the day of Lag BaOmer to light fires. A large celebration is held at the tomb of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai and his son Rabbi Eliezer in Meron, where hundreds of thousands usually celebrate with bonfires, torches, song, dancing, and feasting. In 1983, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Boston reinstated a century-old tradition among his Hasidim to light a bonfire at the grave of Rabbi Akiva in Tiberias on night. The tradition had been abandoned due to murderous attacks on participants in the isolated location. After the bonfire, the Reb delivered it, gave blessings, and distributed. Later that same night, the Reb cut the hair of 3-year-old boys for their upsherin. For many years, New York-based Rabbi Aaron Teitelbaum Satmar discouraged bonfires, saying it was not the custom to light them outside of the land of Israel. However, when his father Rabbi Moses Teitelbaum instructed him to organize a large bonfire in the Satmar enclave of Kurias Joel, tens of thousands turned up. Zionists. For Zionists, see section below, the bonfires are said to represent the signal fires that the Bar Kokhba rebels lit on the mountaintops to relay messages, or are in remembrance of the Bar Kokhba Revolt against the Romans, who had forbidden the kindling of fires that signaled the start of Jewish holidays. Religious. Historically, children across Israel used to go out and play with bows and arrows, reflecting the midrashic statement that the rainbow, the sign of God's promise to never again destroy the earth with the flood, Genesis 9:11-13, was not seen during Bar Yochai's lifetime, as his merit protected the world. Zionists. In Israel, it is a holiday for children and the various youth movements. It is also marked in the Israel Defense Forces as a week of the program Youth Brigades, which were established in 1941 and which bear the emblem of a bow and arrow. Parades. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, encouraged parades to be held in Jewish communities around the world as a demonstration of Jewish unity and pride. Shabbat sponsors parades as well as rallies, bonfires, and barbecues for thousands of participants around the world each year. Songs. Several traditional songs are associated with the holiday. These are sung around bonfires, at weddings, and that held by Hasidic Rebs on. The popular song was composed by Rabbi Shimon Levi, a 16th century Kabbalist in Tripoli, Libya, in honor of Shimon bar Yochai. Other songs include a poem arranged as an alphabetical acrostic and Tishmil. Most Hasidic Reb conduct are on Lag BaOmer, in addition to or instead of a bonfire. A full meal is usually served, and candles are lit. It is traditional to sing, and, among the Satmar Hasidim, is sung at the in addition to the other songs. Teachings of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, both from the Talmud and the Zohar, are generally expounded upon by Rebs there. In some Hasidic courts, the Reb may shoot a toy bow and arrow during that, and 3-year-old boys may be brought to have a lock of hair cut by the Reb as part of their first haircut. A rabbinic controversy. Some rabbis, namely the Shas and Sofer and the Shul Yomeshiv, have opposed the celebration of or the practice of certain customs observed on Lag BaOmer. These halakhic scholars pointed out that the way Lag BaOmer is observed differs from the traditional manner in which anniversaries of deaths are observed, as Lag BaOmer is observed in a festive way, whereas usually a Yahrzeit is marked by observances that bring out the solemn and serious nature of the day. Other issues raised include the practice of throwing clothes into bonfires, which is perceived as wasteful, the fact that the holiday has not been celebrated by earlier sages, and the prohibition of establishing holidays. Nevertheless, these authorities did not ban the holiday. Other rabbis responded to the aforesaid opposition by explaining that it has been observed by many great rabbis and that expensive clothes are never bound. They relate what happened on the day of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai's death as evidence that the day is very holy and should be celebrated. Zionism. In modern Israel, early Zionists redefined Lag BaOmer from a rabbinic-oriented celebration to a commemoration of the Bar Kokhba Revolt against the Roman Empire. According to work published by Yale's Area of Rutgers University, a number of Lag BaOmer traditions were reinterpreted by Zionist ideologues to focus on the victory of the Bar Kokhba rebels rather than their ultimate defeat at Beta 3 years later. The plague that decimated Rabbi Akiva's 24,000 disciples was explained as a veiled reference to the revolt. The 33rd day when the plague ended was explained as the day of Bar Kokhba's victory. By the late 1940s, Israeli textbooks for school children painted Bar Kokhba as the hero while Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai and Rabbi Akiva stood on the sidelines cheering him on. This interpretation lent itself to singing and dancing around bonfires by night to celebrate Bar Kokhba's victory, and playing with bows and arrows by day to remember the actions of Bar Kokhba's rebel forces. This interpretation of the holiday reinforced the Zionist reading of Jewish history and underscored their efforts to establish an independent Jewish state. As Benjamin Lau writes in Haaretz, this is how Lag BaOmer became a part of the Israeli Zionist psyche during the first years of Zionism in Israel. A clear distinction became evident between Jews and Israelis in the way the day was celebrated. The religious Jews lit torches in Rabbi's honor and sang songs about him, while non-Israelis, sitting around an alternative bonfire, sang about a hero whom the entire nation loved and focused on the image of a powerful hero who galloped on a lion in his charges against the Romans. In modern Israel, Lag BaOmer is a symbol for the fighting Jewish spirit. The Pomash division of the Haganah was established on Lag BaOmer 1941, and the government order creating the Israel Defense Forces was issued on Lag BaOmer 1948. Beginning in 2004, the Israeli government designated Lag BaOmer as the day for saluting the IDF reserves.